Okay, so I am at the home of two of my friends who are also residents of Manhattan Plaza, as I am. This
Hi.
is Sarah, my friend, and this is Tony, her friend. And I'm gonna wait a while till the ambulance goes by.
Oh, there'll be plenty of those.
Okay, this is very spontaneous. I'm here to talk with Tony because he has grown up in Hell's Kitchen as I have. Of course, he has been here much longer than I have. And I'm going to ask Tony a few questions. Now, first of all, that is a picture of Tony when he was just a child, a baby. And he is on the rooftop of one of the buildings here in Hell's Kitchen, or that is what I understand. I'm going to ask him about it. Okay, Tony, about that picture. That was you when you were a baby, right?
Right, and that's my mother with me, and it was on the rooftop of 694 10th Avenue between 48th and 49th. And my parents moved in there when I was a infant, and I lived there on and off until I moved into Manhattan Plaza in 1994.
All right. Just to clarify that, if the camera didn't pick it up too well, perhaps Sarah, what he said is that he lived there. It was what address? It was
694
694
10th Avenue.
10th Avenue.
Between what and what?
Between 48th and 49th.
I lived at 525 West 47th Street, and that was between 10th and 11th Avenues. But to continue with Tony and his experience as he lived here in Hell's Kitchen. So back then, that was what year?
Oh, that had to be about 1938, 39.
1938 or 1939.
Yeah, about that.
What I notice about that picture is that on the rooftop, you can actually see some of the buildings in the back. And do you know which direction that camera captures? Is it the north? Is it the south?
This is looking towards 49th Street.
Okay, so it's looking towards 49th Street, then it's looking north.
Wait a second.
I myself grew up around this area.
Actually, I think it's looking towards 48th Street.
Okay, so it's looking towards 10th Avenue, right? Would you say?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Now the building, to your best recollection, was it like in the center of the street so that it wasn't like on the street corner where you could?
It's it's my building.
Uh-huh.
It's directly in the center.
I'm sure back then they didn't have the skyscrapers that they have right now.
No.
What I noticed in that picture is there's somebody behind, I think, a part of the building.
I can't make out who that is.
Of course, you were too young, but you don't know if that's like a sister or a brother of yours. It could be.
No.
Your siblings were younger than you or older?
My siblings weren't born. Weren't born yet.
So you were.
How old were you then, Tony? In that
About
picture?
2.
About 2.
So you were the oldest of all your siblings?
Yeah.
Okay.
And were those your first steps that you were taking, or you probably took some steps before then? Because
I haven't the fairest idea.
we'd have to ask your mom.
What do you answer if I tried doing a poker?
So you kept that picture throughout your life. That's interesting.
I didn't keep it. My parents kept it, and I
Okay,
inherited it.
Okay, so you inherited that picture from your parents.
You might want to say, excuse me for interrupting, Tony's mother, this is sort of an aside, but it's interesting because Tony's mother we live here, Tony, you, and myself live at the Manhattan Plaza. Tony's mother, Jenny Brilla, was one of the first, how many people, Tony, to move into the 400 building? She lived on the 20th floor, and how many people then were in the building, Tony?
I don't know.
But she was like the first. And at that time, you could decide whether you wanted a studio or a one bedroom.
Even if you didn't have a big family, it was just.
Is that correct, Tony?
Yeah.
But Jenny, Tony told me, his mother was she was somebody who thought about others, and she said, I don't need a one bedroom, I'm alone, I'll take the studio. Unlike myself, I would have taken that one bedroom so fast, it wouldn't have been fun.
You needed a 3-bedroom.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's
So I
it.
just wanted to let you know that. And what year, Tony, was that? That had to be 1970. It was when the building, this one, 1977, that Jenny moved into the building. And how many years did she live here until she unfortunately passed away? Right, but what year did she pass
I
away?
don't remember.
You don't remember what year she passed on?
About 2001.
It was before I met you. And I actually did see his mother, like in the, in the passing in the lobby. But I didn't know her because I didn't know Tony then. So she lived here 77 to 87 to 97. She lived here almost 25 years. But it's interesting, Tony.
Okay, are any of these pictures here? Any of your mother?
Yes.
Yes. One of my mothers, my mother, my brother, my father, and I guess this is one of my brother's children.
Oh, yeah, that was Carolyn.
That's not Carolyn.
Well, that's what you told me, Tony. That was
Okay,
the first
so-
baby born.
That lady holding
Michael.
Oh, Michael. Oh, okay, sorry.
So that lady holding the baby
Is
is.
Jenny Brilla.
Okay, that's Tony's mother.
And
that was after Tony grew up, right?
Yeah, Tony is on the right,
Yeah,
and his brother Ray is in the middle, and behind Jenny is Tony's papa, whose name was
Andy.
Andy.
And the baby
Where he thinks it's
she's babysitting, or
yeah, that's like, I think that was the first grandchild born to the family. And so that would have been who, Tony?
Michael.
Okay, Michael, who is the son of
Raymond.
Raymond. Okay. And Raymond is the young man behind Tony. And also there's those two other photos, Tony, lying against the couch. You might want to show those.
This is myself, my brother, and my sister, and also my brother, my sister, and my parents.
as Tony said, this is himself. You're in the center, right?
Yeah.
That's himself in the center with his brother and his sister. And here is Tony, I believe he's to the left, and his sister and one of his brothers and his parents. And you don't know approximately what year this might have been?
And where, Tony, is the picture on the left taken? Was that taken here on your... It doesn't look like your street
No.
or in front of your apartment building.
It looks like that's out in the suburbs. even.
Exactly.
No,
And it might have been Easter, like an Easter Sunday, because Sonia's wearing a hat.
I can't tell.
So you don't know if you were visiting relatives or were going on.
No, this would be in the city itself. It would be in the area.
Also, Tony's grandparents. Wait a second. Whose parents lived on what street right near you? Whose parents? Your mom.
My mother's family lived in the area.
On what street? Did they live on 10th Avenue, or did they live on one of the side streets?
No. For this, I have to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
It's interesting.
My mother was born in the area.
She was born in Hell's Kitchen,
In
right?
Hell's Kitchen. She didn't speak English until she went to school.
Where was she from, Tony?
She was born here,
Oh, okay, but where were her parents from?
Russia.
Russia. Oh, so she spoke Russian, right?
Yes.
And some other
Oh,
languages.
no wonder.
Okay. So, and at that time, it wasn't as densely populated as it is today. And it was a very clannish type of neighborhood.
Clannish meaning,
Clannish. Everything was tight knit.
you mean everybody's family lived like
Okay.
next door?
It was, yeah, everybody had
Groups stood with each other, right? Groups
Yeah.
of people stayed with certain groups of
Right.
people.
So my mother grew up at 756 10th Avenue,
756 10th Avenue
between 51st and 52nd Street.
Street.
Very curious. My first day with her was at this restaurant, Jewish restaurant on 51st Street. And as I looked out the back door windows of the restaurant, I could see the backyard of where my mother grew up. You know, because it was on that rock.
Good for you, Tony, that you remembered that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, which Jewish restaurant was that?
It was, he went out of business. He was an Israeli, made terrific falafel. It was a small place called
Aziz.
Azurai Cafe.
Okay, and that was
That was on
51st Street.
51st Street. If you were traveling on 10th Avenue going uptown, and you looked to the right, you would have seen it on the left. It was just a tiny little kosher Israeli restaurant with just a couple of tables.
between which streets would you say?
It was just off that there.
It was just off.
Towards 9th.
It was just past the library.
Let me see.
It was one block past the library, correct, Tony?
It was
Because the
Columbus
library.
Branch.
Yes,
One block past.
because the library's between 50th and 51st,
yeah,
and he was on
51st.
on 51st. You would not know it if you didn't know of it, I don't think, because it was so like a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Except he had a little
Canopy.
outside of the door. And so he didn't have any tables or chairs out of there, I don't think.
No.
I don't think he ever did that. But he was there for years. It's closed. But
When do you think it closed?
it closed about probably at least a year ago. We found out
Only a year ago?
we found out from Tony's friend because she would stop there. She liked it there. Yvonne. I won't go into why I stopped going there, but he tried to make some moves on me, like he did with a lot of other women. So he was a very frisky, one of the
That was the owner of the store.
the owner, and his name was Ezra Cohen. character, a real character. A fantastic, though. Yeah, the food was terrific.
But anyway,
Yes.
when I went in there, and he had, the back open,
He could
and
see.
I look out the back, I could see backyards, and I could see where my grandparents used to live. That's where my mother lived.
Okay, you saw the windows from the backyard of that eatery, right?
Right.
So you're thinking you don't know that place, right, Lucy?
Not in detail,
Yeah.
but I used to frequent that library. I used to go along that area when I was a kid.
Right.
There was that school there.
Yeah, Sacred Heart School.
Right. Now that was across the
That was,
51st and.
it was Sacred Heart was on 51st Street.
So wait, so Tony, also we're kind of advancing years, but the school you went to, you didn't go to Sacred Heart. But wait a minute, so your mother grew up on between 51st and 52nd Street. Then how did she wind up in then you're gonna have to tell about her meeting your dad.
Oh, well, that's what I was getting at.
Very good.
Okay, proceed.
My father was born in Pennsylvania, but his family, his father and his mother, went back to the Ukraine. I believe, perhaps my grandfather was a hellraiser, and he was getting into a lot of trouble.
Here in the United States.
So he had to go back to the Ukraine.
Okay, that's your grandfather, right?
Yeah.
He got into trouble?
Oh, yeah, he probably, his whole life, I suspect, he got into a lot of trouble.
Okay, but how old? Well, he wasn't a kid, right? He was a grown.
No, this is when I was man.
When he
I
was.
don't know what kind of trouble he got into. I don't know anything about him. My father doesn't speak much about him. I don't think he ever really got to know him because he abandoned, once he got back to the Ukraine, he abandoned the family there. He got left his kids, and they just grew up without the father or a father.
What about his mother? Did she stay here or did she go back with him?
She went back.
With him.
She went back.
Oh, so he got in trouble and he had to go back to the Ukraine, right?
Yeah. That's what I think.
Do you think he was a bootlegger or?
He was a womanizer. He was everything.
Oh, jeez.
A boozer. Perhaps it was all booze.
Okay.
Alcohol.
And his wife stayed with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they did then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then
So
Andy
anyway,
stayed
my
here.
father grew up in the Ukraine, but he always knew that he was an American citizen because he was born in the United States. So that when he turned 21, and the only thing there were the mines. So he worked in the mines there. This is the western part of the Ukraine, near the Czech border. So he immigrated to the States because he knew he was born here. So he was a citizen of the United States. So when he was about 21, he came to the United States. And he lived down on the Lower East Side with the other Ukrainians. About 6th Street, 7th Street, 13th Street, in that area. Because at that time I have a Ukrainian district. Okay, now at that time also, they had a lot of dance halls.
Bars and grills too. Dance halls.
Dance halls, like Webster Hall, or
Did you ever hear of Webster Hall?
I've heard
That's
the
down
name,
by
but
NYU.
I'm not really
Master
familiar
Plan.
with dance hall. I mean, bars and grills I know,
Yeah.
but
no,
Dance
but they had a
halls.
lot of dance. At that time, they did have dance halls in New York. Not only that, but the last one I remember, the Corso on East 86th Street, which was a Spanish place, in a German neighborhood. But they downtown they have a lot of dance halls. In fact, in this area, Sacred Hearts, a school, and a large auditorium. They used to use a dance hall. Hartley House had a nice dance hall.
You know
yeah,
that, Lucy.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go to Hartley, how they had parties for kids. That was occasionally. Okay, and those pictures.
This was the Hartley House basketball team.
Very good, Tony. So-
And which one are you? You're
One thing here.
And you, Tony, played.
That's right here.
wow. You're okay.
He's usually the tallest. He was always tall.
So Tony is way back here. May not be very visible.
No, there he is. That's nice and clear. Very clear. So, Tony,
And-
before you go to that time, finish about the dance hall where your dad used to go.
So anyway, so there were ethnic Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, whatever, and they were a drawing place, and my mother used to go down there to those dances, and that's where she and my father met.
It was a place for men and women to, to
Yeah,
meet.
socializing
So,
places.
yes.
And they were both good dancers.
Oh,
They were the polka. You know, they were,
that's like a polka, right?
yeah, that's a polka. If you want the music, I got a tape of
Polkas.
polka.
So then,
And so that's how they met. And my mother, like I said, didn't speak English until she went to school. But even though she was born here, her parents spoke only Russian in the house. They never did really learn to speak English.
And what age was your mother when she went to school and learned? Was she teenager or 18 or what?
I don't know, from the first grade.
Oh, first grade.
Yeah, from the
Okay,
first
so
grade.
then she's
She learned in
So-
did she go to school like 52nd Street?
I don't know exactly where she went to school.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where she went to school.
And they married, and then they they got the apartment.
Actually, their first apartment was on this block.
Isn't that interesting?
on this block.
My birth certificate says 501 West 43rd.
Wow. So
Okay.
that would have
So
been,
that's that red building on the corner.
yeah, that would have been, if you go out,
If you go,
it would be going to 10th Avenue.
Go on 10th Avenue.
Yeah, and it would be the first building, because you know the Strand, the apartment building, the Strand, is at 500 West 43rd Street. It's when you're walking on, past the Food Emporium, past the Manhattan Plaza Health Club, you cross the street, that first building on the left-hand side, apartment building is the Strand.
Yeah,
That's 500 West 43rd Street. Right across the street is 501, where Tony's.
Was one.
All right, that's 43rd. I'm thinking maybe what I'm thinking about is that Union Place at 42nd. And
Yeah, but then you go to the next corner at 43rd,
At 43rd.
and that's past that Chinese restaurant, past the Happy Farm or something. I can't remember. Happy Family or something, Chinese. That's 9th Avenue. You get to the next corner after the Union building on 42nd. The next corner, right smack there, Lucy, is the Strand.
I remember when it was being built.
That 500 West 43rd, the
Yeah,
Strand.
there's this decorated fountain outside.
Yeah, that they've been working on for the last 20, because my voice teacher, Marie, she lived in that building, so I went there just about every day. And so, she's unfortunately passed on, but I remember, they're still working on that fountain. But anyways, so Tony was born, if you cross the street there, it would, 501 would be the first building
Okay,
there.
but that's, let's say if I'm headed towards the Hudson River, which is west on
Yeah.
43rd, it would be to my right.
It would be to your right.
So then that's like the northwest corner.
Excuse me.
That's where it would be, right?
Right, that's not.
Northwest.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
So that's-
Yeah, but
And it still exists there, doesn't it, Tony?
yeah, that red building.
It's that red
It's a red
Was it red then?
one. I don't know how
It's a red brick building.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
it doesn't.
It's
you
a
know.
tenement, really like a
But
tenement
then
building.
my parents moved up 10th Avenue to 48, 49 to that building, 694. Actually, to be closer to my grandma.
Isn't that something?
My grandma.
Because they probably felt that was too far away. It was
Yeah,
only
yeah,
like
that
10
was-
blocks.
that was-
Uh,
Because my mother spent a lot of time with her grandparents, you know.
They decided to move closer together, right? So they didn't want to be too far from their parents.
From our parents.
And which is very interesting because if you think about it, that was, there they were at 43rd Street and the grandparents were at 52nd Street, but they wanted to be even closer. Isn't that's what's interesting.
And see, back then they decided to move closer, right?
Yeah.
Did they find an apartment, a building that they could?
Well, they found the apartment
Yeah, they
at
found
the one that they moved into where Tony was born.
Okay.
Do you follow what I'm saying, Lucy?
No, they moved into,
Who did? Your parents?
yeah,
And that's where you were born. You were born in that apartment.
yeah.
Right, you were born at the
Okay,
time
but then they moved uptown to 58 to 49.
Okay, wait a second. First they lived at 43rd Street,
Yeah.
and then they moved to
Yeah, right, okay.
where you.
Right, so what's the,
No, there's none.
so anyway,
And Tony, may I just ask, how many years in all did they stay in that apartment? Now, Tony's father passed on before his mom.
They stayed there, well, my father passed away there in 69.
Wow. And they moved in there when? In 19. It had to be before 1939 because you were born then. Yeah.
About 38.
So they were there and longer because Jenny stayed still in the apartment after Andy passed on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And
Does this make sense to you? Follow
Well, yeah. Let's say in general,
yeah, because you're jumping in.
I'm
So
sorry.
that's okay. You know, I'm fine with it. But what I was gonna say is the rents back then.
Very
You
good.
know, it seems that apartment hunting was better back then, and so were the rents. Because nowadays, I hear you cannot find an apartment, an affordable, even unaffordable in New York. It's just everything's taken. How was they able to just manage to find an apartment near?
Also, Tony, you need to go back. I think you need to go back to the fact that Andy, your father, from the Ukraine, he went to Pennsylvania to continue working as a mine.
Yeah, but he didn't like it in Pennsylvania.
Okay. But he worked in the mines there. He was a mine. What do you
Was a
call-
miner?
He's a miner.
In fact, what he died of,
Yes.
he actually died of
Black.
lung.
Black lung, yeah, that's common, I heard.
Yeah, okay. And, well, he worked in the mines in Pennsylvania, but he wanted to come to New York.
Mhm.
So he
Smart guy.
came to New York and moved to the lower east, not the lower east, to the east side there. You know, the Ukrainian section.
So that would be about the east side, maybe not
From 14th Street to about 6th Street.
14 to 6th
Or
Street.
from 14th to Houston Street. There was a lot of Ukrainians there.
Tony, what is the avenue? Second Avenue or First Avenue?
First, Second Avenue.
Yeah. If at one point too, there were a lot of Ukrainian churches and
In
restaurants.
fact, I was baptized in the St. George Ukrainian Catholic Church. Not Roman Catholic, but Ukrainian Catholic Church on 7th Street.
Okay, do you know if that church is still there?
Yes.
It's still there. I know there's a Ukrainian church around here. That's what I hear. That church. Okay, I had to change the camera. It ran out of memory, so we're starting over again. We just left off where Tony was explaining that I thought there was a Ukrainian church right here near Hell's Kitchen, but not really. So, Tony, what were you saying, that it's not really a Ukrainian church?
Yugoslavian.
It was a Yugoslavian church.
Yeah, well, it's not right, St. Ray Fields, but it used to be on 50th Street. Between 10th and 11th. St. Cyril or whatever. But that's getting ahead of myself. Growing up, I was basically a neighborhood guy.
Mhm.
But one of the things that happened to me when I was in the 6th grade, I was going to PS 17, which still exists, different name. But
What
the
street?
building is on 47th Street,
What's the name of
between
the school
8th
now?
and 9th Avenue.
PS 17. I was almost sent there when I was a teenager, or in my very early teens.
There you go.
What I remember of it, there's an elevated playground, right? You go up some stairs, that's PS 17.
So you go up, so you have to go upstairs.
Yeah, up some stairs. There's a playground that's a little bit above street level. Is that?
Or the playground, the gym is on the top floor. But in the backyard on 47th Street side,
Yeah,
there is the playground. Yeah.
but you have to walk up some stairs.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
elevated from street level, is what I
Right.
meant to say. That's what I remember of it. So you went there.
I went there, that's where I went from 1st grade or kindergarten through the 8th grade.
Mm.
Now, the reason why I left after the 8th grade instead of going to the 9th grade there was because I went to Catholic high school. So after the 8th grade, I went to Cardinal Hayes High School.
That seems to me, what I understand, is that PS 17 was like for kindergartners to
8th grade.
8th grade.
Oh,
I myself, my parents didn't send me to school. I was homeschooled, so that's why I'm not too familiar.
oh,
But so you yourself, you were from about 5 to maybe 12 or so.
yeah.
When I was almost sent there, that it's for teenagers, like from about 13 to 18.
9th to 12th grade, something like
Yes,
that.
yeah, and I'm not too familiar with what grade means, what
Mhm.
age, because my parents homeschooled me. I wasn't sent to school. I accidentally turned off the camera. I turned it on again, as we were saying. I myself, I didn't go to school as a kid. My parents homeschooled me, but my friend Tony here says he went to PS 17, which is at 47th Street. It's in the center of the block between Ace and, Ace and 9th Avenues. And that school has been there a long time. It has been there since Tony was.
Oh, before that even.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know when it was
So
built.
that school might have been there since even the 1800s for all.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it was built.
Okay.
You'd have to go there
But-
and see the
But you went there from kindergarten to 9th grade,
8th grade.
8th grade. So you were about how old when you left?
I don't know, about 12, 13, 14.
Okay, so you were in your early teens.
Early teens.
Do you know that school PS 51? That's
Yes,
it.
51. I didn't go there.
Mhm.
My brother went there. My brother and sister went there. They had to leave. That's because they were converting 17 into a junior high school. And so the lower grades, they were carting off to PS 51 or other schools like it. So once we got into 7th grade, that's where PS 17 picked up. See, I went through BS-17 before the junior high school concept. And as I got to the 7th, 8th grade, that's when they were converting it to a junior high school. Prior to that, it was a public school of all grades, but then they were converting it into a junior high school, and the other kids had to go to other schools for the lower grades. And my brother and sister went to BS-51, which was on 44th, 45th Street. I forget exactly where.
So what Tony was saying is that when he finished school at PS-17, it was being converted. Then kids younger than that, or kids within that age, were sent to PS-51, and then PS-17 was converted into junior high school. Yeah, because when I was a teenager, I remember it was for high schoolers, not for kids younger than that.
Right.
Okay, so.
Okay, now, so what they did was they were going to start a music class. So they came around when I was in the 6th grade, and they said, who wants to take the test for this music class? And all the girls raised their hands. And one of the guys said, oh, we can't let the girls beat us. And he raised his hand, so all the guys raised their hands, including myself. Because I had no interest in taking a music test originally. I took the test and aced it, triple aced it.
Wow, so you were good at music, right?
I have a lot of musical talent.
Okay, did your parents teach you music?
No, this was completely out of the blue.
Oh, well, did your parents have any musical instruments that you practiced?
No.
So it's very much like when you were already about what age you tried for the test and you were good at it?
I was good at it, so when I went into class in 7th grade, they had us, the music teacher, Mr. Rish, he sat at the piano and he said, sing, and he would play the notes, and you had to sing the notes that he played. So I sang the notes that he played, which was exact, perfect. So, boom, he hands me a violin. He said, that's your instrument.
So he knew that the violin was going to be right for you, right?
Right.
And you didn't want to play any singer, you wanted...
I walked away, what's this? No, completely, totally ignorant of everything. No preconceptions of anything. My father had preconceptions. He wanted me to learn to play the accordion. At that time, 2 of my classmates, or 2 of my friends in the neighborhood, were accordion players.
Oh.
And they went on. One of them, Leo Pepino, actually got on to the Ed Sullivan show.
Oh.
Playing the William Tell Overture on the end and brought down the house. He was good. The other one, Jimmy York, I almost had a fist fight with because he had this basketball. He was the only child, and he had his own basketball court in his backyard there. On that day, between 47th and 46th Street. And I used to go there sometimes and shoot baskets. And I brought my cousin, Wayne, who turned out to be excellent in basketball. He wound up in his lifetime coaching youth basketball in Southern Jersey. And his teams always went into national tournaments. So my cousin Wayne was really into basketball. And I had taken him to Jimmy's house, to play basketball. And Jimmy wouldn't let him play. Because he wasn't accepted by his parents. So he wouldn't let my cousin play. And I said, hey, he's got to play. No, then I won't let him play. And I got mad, and I started calling him. It's the first time I ever really called the person names. I called them every name in the book, and they wouldn't fight me or anything. So I just walked down the house the last time I saw him.
Oh, so those are your memories of some of your friends. Now,
So, why wouldn't he let him play, Tony? I'm sorry, I missed that.
He was a
Did it have to do with ethnicity or religion?
no, it wasn't religion. No.
Or the fact that he wasn't a member of the community?
Status.
He,
As far as being a member of the intellectual community.
he wouldn't,
His parents wanted him to hang out only with people who were going to go to school and who looked like they were college material.
okay, but this was a basketball game at his house?
No, he had a basketball court in the backyard.
Right. And
He wouldn't let my cousin,
but your cousin
Wayne,
but what about you? He'd let you play?
Yeah.
Why did he have Wayne's academic
no, well, he knew
report card?
He knew him from the neighborhood.
Oh, and he didn't think much of Wayne as somebody who was a good student or.
Exactly.
Wow.
Well,
That's
Wayne,
interesting.
it turned out, academically, he was able to track his career because he went to Central Commercial High School, studied what he wanted to, as far as bookkeeping and things like that.
And then
And that's what he got into. Well, he went into the Army, worked in finance department, paying people, keeping records. In Japan, he was stationed in Japan, came out of the Army, and then always worked in these offices as a financial officer or, anything very well for himself. And he had a nice family and everything. And he passed away several years ago.
did he always live in this neighborhood?
No, he moved out.
Oh,
Everybody moved out.
oh, so everyone you know moved out of the neighborhood.
Most people.
what was the year they started moving out, Tony?
Oh, I can't
You
remember.
mean when they became young adults?
Yeah.
Oh, so anyone you used to know when you were a teenager, they just left when they became adults, right?
Yeah. Like when I lived on 10th Avenue, I didn't belong to a gang then. But, I mean, the core of the group that I hung out with was my cousin, the Zugar brothers, who lived 2 floors above me, the Bennett brothers, which lived on 4th floor, the top floor. And then there was Joey D, who lived on 49th Street, Whitey, I forget where Whitey lived, and, and as none of them went to college or anything like that, but they all moved out. Like Joey moved to Queens after he got married, and they moved to Queens.
Tony, so, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but so you were you guys were a group of friends who had something in common with each
Yeah,
other?
well,
'Cause
as you're growing up,
Yeah.
you're a kid, you go outside into the streets, you're gonna be with other people,
Yeah.
And the sports and everything.
Mhm.
Like we used to play sports on 49th Street and 10th Avenue there. Stoop ball,
In the street,
in the street, hockey in the street.
on the side street there,
Yeah.
not on 9th Avenue, I mean, not on 10th Avenue.
Not on the avenues, on the street.
Were there a lot of cars then?
There were cars, but it wasn't as populated as it is today.
And where do people park their cars? Right outside
the
of
street.
It wasn't like today where you cannot park.
right?
Um,
No, but stickball and soup ball, things like that, were still popular.
and you also played basketball. I remember you told me
Yeah.
about that, playing it like on across from where Yvonne lives. Didn't you play basketball?
Oh,
there?
no, that's a ball field.
Oh, that's a ball field. You like to play baseball. I
Yeah,
remember
play
that.
baseball,
You told me
yeah.
you like to play baseball.
Now also, on 47th Street, there was a church.
Mhm.
It's not there anymore, St. Albert's.
Okay, for between what avenues? Was 47th?
9th
47 between 9th and 10th. 47th is my street.
Yeah, between 9th and 10th.
Okay,
St. Albert's Church.
I don't think I remember that. That must have been torn down before I was
It
born.
wasn't a big church or anything like that. It was an apartment building, and the church was
Like in
downstairs.
the basement or something.
No, address on the first
On the
floor.
first floor.
You couldn't recognize it as a church from far away.
Mhm.
Although they did have a nunnery, the nuns lived a couple of blocks down. And
I may have to ask you about that. Go on. Yeah, go on.
a couple of doors down from there. And now the thing about St. Albert's Church was not so much the church, but one priest,
Oh,
Father Gallagher. Now, Father Gallagher had an MSW. He had a Master's in Social Work. And he was the leader of the Catholic Big Brother program. So he was just, that was his job in the diocese. The leader of the Big Brother program. So they put him in this church, thinking it's a small church. It was a Belgian church, actually. And you know what, that he wouldn't have many duties there. Because of his duties with the diocese. But what he did was he became a factor in the lives of everybody around him, in the neighborhood, in that church. And he was very instrumental, in the lives of a lot of
Was he
people
very
around
instrumental in your life, Tony?
there. One curious thing, I was talking one day with another person, and there was a girl there present who was also grew up at the same time. And I mentioned Father Gallagher, and I said he played a very important part with the guys of the community. And she chimed in with, yeah, but only the guys. In other words, this outreach he had for the children, for the kids in the neighborhood, only extended to the males and not to the females.
What was that supposed to mean?
it could mean a lot of things, actually.
Yeah, actually, the female was, the male growing up, wanted somebody you competed against in sports,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
the gangs that you were in.
Now, why do you say gang? Why was that? Why do you use the word gang?
The people,
You called yourselves gangs?
this was a gang.
And Tony, you never finished talking about.
This was a gang. We were all hawks.
Oh,
You know,
tell
we
us
all
about
have the same.
that.
We all have the same jackets.
Yeah. And you were, what was the name of your gang?
Hawks.
TALKS?
HAWK.
And what was the Hawks? What distinguished your gang?
Our jackets.
But what was the purpose of your gang?
Well,
Were these the guys who lived upstairs?
No.
Were you sports?
This was 46th Street. This was Hartley House.
Okay. And what did you?
We run dances,
Oh, okay.
have dances. We played together as a basketball team
Okay.
against other teams,
Okay.
and we hung around in that 46th Street Park.
Do you know where that park is?
Okay, that's, I was gonna eventually bring all that up, but continue. I'll
The
ask.
46th Street to 47th Street, out 46th to 45th Street.
Okay, that would have to be DeWitt Clinton Park, right?
I don't know what it's called.
Oh, you mean the one that you see now that still exists?
Yeah, that DeWitt Clinton.
DeWitt.
Okay, it's between 10th, or let me see, is it 11th and 12th?
Oh,
And
no.
then,
Oh no, DeWitt Clinton Park is the one on 52nd Street.
yeah.
No, that
All
I
right, I'll ask,
play baseball.
okay.
That I play baseball there.
Mhm.
No, this one is on 46th Street between 10th and 9th.
Then that's that part
And it goes
that,
from 46th Street to 45th. And all it is, it looks like a big handball court.
oh yes, that,
And divided.
yeah, that park, it's like smack dab in the middle of the block.
Yeah.
Oh, that's that ambulance go by first. But anyway, that block between, and it's across from St. Clement's, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that park. I wondered how long that was there. I wonder if it was recently built, but apparently that's,
That's a long time. That was where one of the most famous
Yeah.
murders,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
the Cape Man murder.
oh yeah, the Cape Man murder. Happens there,
On
right?
46th Street.
Now,
Between.
the truth about the Cape Man murder, what it was the, see, I used to hang out in that park.
Uh-huh.
And it occurred when I was on the boat going to Germany when I was in the Army. So I can tell you what, it was.
Okay, wait, I didn't quite get that. You used to hang out in that park and,
But after I went into started college, I stopped hanging out there.
okay. So when you started going to college, you stopped hanging out there?
Yeah. But what happened was there was a lot of friction with the Puerto Ricans that was lived on where Lincoln Center is now.
Oh, yeah.
That whole area
That area there
that they all
was
ripped
when it
down.
was settlements. There used to be a large
Yes.
Puerto Rican neighborhood,
Yeah.
and they came uptown. There was going to be a fight. No, they came uptown for a reason, and the real reason behind it.
Had to do with a woman, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it always does.
No, not a woman,
Okay.
with one guy. In the neighborhood gang, there was this Irishman who was a lover. And from what I understand, he was very good at seducing young ladies. And this story is told to me by the girl who was the girlfriend of one of the guys that got killed by the Cape Man. You know, and she said this guy was very good at seducing
This Irishman.
this Irishman. And I said, you too? And she said, yes, me too.
Okay. Okay.
So in other words, the group, so this guy expanded his territory from this neighborhood here to the Puerto Rican girls.
Which was his big mistake.
And they came up to avenge this, or to, because, the girls complained about this guy, and they were coming up to avenge, or to do something about this guy. But they never got to see this guy because he knew they were coming up and he disappeared. And the two guys that was sitting in the park, knowing that they were coming, because she said her boyfriend told her there's going to be trouble tonight. And so they came up, and the two kids were there and sitting in the 45th Street side of the park, where the swings are. It's like between 46th and 45th. There's like a slant there where there's a fence and the swings are. They were around where the swings are, and came up, and they were arguing, back and forth. And this guy Arroyo, I forget his name, he went crazy. The caveman, they called him. He was a nut job, and he had
Machete?
no, a big knife. He started stabbing these kids.
God. Wait a minute, he started stabbing the Puerto Rican kids?
No, not the Puerto Rican kid.
So the caveman was a Puerto Rican guy.
Yeah.
A guy.
Yeah.
And he stabbed, and one of those guys was this woman that you spoke with. That was her.
Yeah, Rita. Rita, her name.
Her boyfriend?
Her
Or?
boyfriend.
Oh.
And
That's-
another guy. And he killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I didn't know about this until I came home from the Army.
Yeah.
And the New York Times
Yes.
magazine section ran a big article on this. I didn't know anything about
I
it.
think too, if I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject, but I think this is how West Side Story, the musical, came about.
Yeah, I heard.
And then also there was, and I went to see it, it didn't do well.
I know.
It was a
Paul
Broadway
Simon.
musical, right, exactly, called The Caveman. And it was the story of, it was the musical was the story of what happened.
I got it from the girlfriend. And she
Yeah.
told me what happened,
Gee.
from her perspective.
Did she witness it?
She left.
Right before they came,
Yeah.
because they probably
She
said,
knew that
get out of there.
He's told her,
Get out of there.
There's going to be trouble.
Gosh, yeah. Now,
How long, approximately what year was that?
59.
1959. Oh, okay.
but it was a huge event in the,
Yeah.
This Hell's Kitchen.
yes, it was like,
Oh yeah. They draw crowds and crowds of people, protesting, anti-Puerto Ricans, blah blah blah. This and
yeah,
that.
yeah.
The neighborhood was totally divided. But the thing was, it was because of this one guy who was running around with all these girls,
Mm.
and they got upset about it,
But the Irishman wasn't even there.
Oh no, of course
He wasn't even present. Tony, another thing is, I'm sorry, I don't know, I kind of went out of it for a few minutes here, but I think it's important for you to also tell about what happened in terms of, that you being someone who, what year of high school, you were in grade school when it was discovered that you had musical.
I already did.
Okay, but did you go on and tell me what happened with
so,
the music?
Anyway.
Because we're jumping all over. It's
I mean,
okay.
this is spontaneous.
Okay.
So, going back to me, when I was in the 7th grade, they gave me violin.
He gave you a violin.
So, anyway, I decided I was going to play the violin. I wanted to buy my own, because it was a school violin.
So you wanted to buy your own violin.
So I talked to my parents. So we went on to Wurlitzer, which is on 42nd Street. Was on 42nd
It's not
Street.
there anymore, correct, Tony?
There was a music store on 42nd.
A music school.
A music school on 42nd.
Oh,
Wurlitzer had a big, well, not a big, but had a school there.
between 42nd, between what and what?
I think it was closer to 6.
Okay,
I don't recall the exact location.
okay.
So anyway, I bought a violin there, and was introduced to Mr. Whittick, who became my violin teacher.
Okay.
And he was my violin teacher until, all through high school. And then when I went to college, I stopped playing. I stopped taking lessons. So through high school, I was taking lessons from Mr. Whittick. I didn't join my high school orchestra until my senior year. Unfortunately, I should have joined it earlier. I put the violin down, and I just, when I moved, I eventually moved into my own apartment on 3rd Avenue, 34th Street. That's when I started working after I graduated. Went into the Army, came out of the Army, started working, went to work for the city, and
You got a master's degree.
no, I don't have a master's. I've done more master's work, but I don't have a degree.
Okay. In social work.
But where am I? With the violin.
Mm-hmm.
I had put it down and I didn't touch it again until after I graduated and everything, and I went to work for the city. And in 1967, I wound up working in this office on 8th Avenue and 30th Street, and I began to develop.
He would just like, get out! Get out!
All right, so I had to change the camera again. It ran out of memory. I'm recharging one camera and using a different one now. So where we left off with Tony, he was talking about how he was playing the violin and he put it down for a number of years, but then he was working somewhere where he was interested in some young lady, so apparently he wanted to impress her. And what were you saying about how you contacted your teacher, but he said you're too advanced?
Right. So he referred me to a professional, a true professional, a man who played under Toscanini, and who taught at the Manhattan School of Music, Jules Shire, up on 14th Street. And Jules appraised my talent and said, you got it all, but you got to put it all together, which I never did. And he got me interested in the viola. In fact, he was basically a viola player as well. But then I ran into serious health problems. One of which, of course, was my drinking, which became a big problem eventually. And then after I got sober, a neurological disorder hit me, myasthenia gravis, which was so bad that actually I was originally diagnosed as having Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS.
So that was a misdiagnosis, right?
Yeah.
They thought you had Lou Gehrig's disease.
That's because of the amount of disorientation that my body had. I had lost 40% control of my muscles, which is a lot. I was falling down a lot. My face was getting scarred. And my teeth were being not knocked out, but chipped. And eventually it was, once I got the proper diagnosis, myasthenia gravis, we were able to bring it under control. And here it is 30 years later, and everything's okay. But anyway, going back to the music, I never really pursued it as I should. And I don't know if I could have.
Did you really want to be a musician?
It came so late in life, that I never really saw myself as a musician. I never said, this is what I want to do. I know the talent is there, it's in the family. My second cousin Bernie, who was in Pennsylvania, he's now a millionaire. But that's because of something else. He went to work for the telephone company. But in Pennsylvania, he had his own polka band, which was big in that community. And I think I have a recording somewhere of his band. And they were very successful. He met his wife there through the polka business, and they raised their family, and he was very successful. But also he worked for Nobel in Pennsylvania, and he became an inventor. And him and another guy invented a important part of the development of the cell phone, and he has the patent on it, and that's where he's got millions.
I would not even be using this cell phone to record this if he had not invented it. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe somebody else might have, but I guess it's lucky he did.
But anyway, no, I never really saw myself, or never looked into the idea of being a professional musician. I loved it. I mean, I really fell in love with the violin. Violinists, I'd go to Carnegie Hall, especially whenever I get free concerts there. And I really developed a good, strong background. As you can see, I have a enormous CD collection in soul classical music.
So you like classical music, right?
Yeah, very definitely. But I also like all the dancing. I've done dancing in all different nations. The Latinos, dances, rumba, cha-cha, and that I did. I've gone through Latin dances like the Corso on 86th Street. And I've gone through Polish and Russian dances and Yugoslavian dances, and did all that dancing, which I enjoyed very much.
When I go to Coney Island, people speak Russian around there. So have you ever been there? Do you have any friends from there? You've been to Coney Island, right?
No, I know the Coney Island, but see, I know that story from another angle.
Uh-huh.
I worked for the Department of Social Services, and I was sent to Bay Ridge Center, and the city had various programs within the department. Like they had a Cuban refugee program for the Cubans. They had a gypsy caseload. And when I got to Bay Ridge, I discovered that they had a Jewish Russian Jews program for the Russian
Orthodox?
Jewish immigrants.
Oh, immigrants.
They had to be vetted by Hillel, a Jewish organization, and then they were referred to Bay Ridge. And we had I had a section in which, employment section, 2 of my workers spoke Hebrew the whole day in interviewing these women. And these are things that are not well known as what the city, you had to be working in them not to know that they even existed. But they were all Brooklynites, living a lot of them in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn. That's where they came in and they gravitated to, like families living together. So when you're talking about but there's a lot of different enclaves in Brooklyn about the Russians and the Jewish neighborhoods. And when I lived in Brooklyn, when I was married, it was in Greenpoint, which was originally a heavily Polish neighborhood. A lot of Polish people lived there. My ex-in-laws were Polish. That the mother was good friends with my mother and her sisters. Like they grew up together.
Tony, I'm sorry to interrupt. You might want to tell about the fact that Jenny's whole family lived. Her sisters, they all lived like a block away.
Originally.
Yeah, that just tells about.
What's important is they moved out.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody moved out. My mother's family, they all lived clustered around my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
One hand lived on 49th Street, one on 4th Street, one on 47th Street. 2 lived on 47th Street. But they eventually all moved out. They gravitated towards the suburbs. To Jersey, some of them out to the island.
Long Island?
Yeah, Long Island.
Oh.
A couple of them moved out too, which is basically the trend of the whole neighborhood. A lot of the old-time families in Hell's Kitchen moved out to the suburbs, which let us space for all the hippies or the younger people to move in.
Do you remember Dewitt Clinton Park? That park it's between, let's say, 52nd and 54th. I know it takes up about 2 blocks in all directions, but it's between.
I know it well.
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time on the ball field there. Growing up, that ball field was all rocks and stones in the baseball field. I played a lot of ball there.
Baseball?
Baseball. We used to go down there a lot. And I never hung out in the park after night, after dark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite sure there were gangs or groups of people that did.
So there were gangs in that park after dark, right?
Probably, yeah.
Even my father said that there were gangs during his time. You used to play ball in the field, right? Do you remember those bleachers that were around? It was like a brick structure that was on one side and
That was on 11th Avenue. I know, on 12th Avenue.
yeah.
Yeah, the big,
Well, the bleachers, they might be called spectator stands, but it was made out of brick, and it was on one side of the ball field, unless that was built after you stopped playing.
that was never there.
Oh, well, because that's what I remember. Okay, so when you played ball there, I guess those spectator stands were not there. They seemed like they were built long ago. How about the playground? Do you remember those rocks that kids climb on?
Yeah.
That has always been there.
Yeah, that was on 12th Avenue going there.
That was towards, yeah, more towards the 12th, and it's close to the, I think, the 52nd Street side. And when you used to play at Clinton, the ball field, you say the ball field was mostly rocks. It wasn't grass.
No, there was no grass.
No grass,
It
just
was sand and
sand and rocks.
Yeah.
How could you tell where the pitcher's mound was and if it was?
It designated it.
Oh,
37,
okay. The 1940s,
40s, 50s.
the 40s and the 50s. As a teenager, you used to play there, right?
Yeah.
I used to play ball. I don't know. It seems those spectator stands should have been there because, I myself, when I was a kid in the
I might have forgotten all about them.
yeah, because see, they took them down as I think it must have been taken down in the 80s or maybe 90s, and they're no longer there. The ball field is now both a soccer field and a baseball field.
And it's very nice. It's very well manicured.
And they put up those large lights so that around the ball field so that people can play in the nighttime. Those lights were erected there maybe in the late 70s, early 80s, because I remember they weren't there, but then they were built.
In my day, these side streets, between 10th and 11th especially, were used for stickball games.
Hmm.
And they were big. And those, at that time, a team, they usually played for kegs of beer. And that was a big competition, but a lot of the kids, for instance, this picture, this guy here, Vito Cristiano, he was doing second story jobs.
He was a friend of yours?
Yeah, it was very easy to get mixed up with the wrong crowd.
Hmm. And he got mixed in with the wrong crowd?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, what happened to him?
And I don't know. I don't know how many of the others might have gotten mixed up in the wrong crowd. Things like this, basketball, sports, these, or things like running dances, table good activities, they kept us away from the ethics of the street, so to speak. The ethics of the street were get ahead, get ahead, get ahead. Be somebody as easily as you can without education, by force, muscle, or whatever have you. And a lot of people fell into that. So therefore you had a lot of people winding up in jail.
So some of your friends might have ended up in jail, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You don't know if they did or didn't, right?
Oh yeah, I don't. Vito was the only one whose name I remember. I don't remember. This guy I remember was going out with this girl Lisa, who was college bound. That she wound up going to Hunter. And from what she was his girlfriend. And then one day he tells her that he's not going to school or anything like that. She was heartbroken. He had to break up with him and everything. You know, it was, you know, a decision everybody had to make. You know.
Okay, so this is a picture of you. How old were you there approximately?
18.
18. And do you know what building you're in front of there?
Could have been Shepherd Hall.
Shepherd Hall, and that was
And
at
City College.
City. Oh, so then that's way uptown,
Yeah,
or it was way uptown.
This is definitely City College campus.
Do you know who took the picture?
No.
Back then, what kind of cameras did they have? Do you know? Because no.
I was never into that. I went to school when I went to City College. We were completely lost. We didn't know what the hell was going on. Like my friend Paul, we were sitting there. You know, you figure out your own schedule. And so we're sitting in this auditorium, and we had chemistry. You know, chemistry involved 2 hours of lecture a week and 4 hours of lab. And the 4 lab hours were continuous. So if you took lab at Wednesday at 1 o'clock, it was 1, 2, 3, and 4 o'clock that you were in. And then the 2 hours of lecture, you had to mark off separately. And you had to devise your own schedule. So somebody asked Paul about this, you know, and he says, oh, he said, just take 1 hour, you know, and that's all. So this other person put in another class at 2 o'clock when he should still have been in lab for 4 hours. So it completely messed up his whole schedule. So because Paul didn't know, we weren't given any instructions. We're supposed to figure everything out for ourselves. So this guy was looking for Paul the whole time. He was going to beat the hell out of him because he had given him wrong advice. Paul went on. Paul he lived on 50th Street between 10th and 11th, 9th and 10th. And became a good friend of mine. Actually, we were born 9 days apart. He was Ukrainian also. And he had gone to our public high school. He was an athlete also. He was on a school basketball team. And we started engineering together. And he pursued it, and then he dropped out of engineering. But he went to pre-architect. And he eventually became an architect, licensed and everything. But the thing was, Paul was a workaholic. And as he was going to school, he went to work for an architectural firm. So that when he finally got his degree, he had all his experience in the architectural firm that he was able to take his test for his license right away. And he got his license right away. And he met this girl in Columbia. He got his architectural degree in Columbia. After he graduated from City College, he went to Columbia for the architect, and he met this girl, and she was Hawaiian, with a strong Asian background, and they got married, and he moved to Hawaii. Unfortunately, Paul passed away a couple of years ago, but I visited them in Hawaii at one point, after I got sober, and I stayed with them for a while, and it was very nice. I got to see the Hawaiian islands. Went on a tour, about 5 of them. It was very nice for a visit. Very nice.
Okay, so that's a picture of you when you were in the military.
Now this is my high school senior year picture.
Oh, it looked like you were in the military. Okay.
Now that's my senior year picture. You don't have my military.
So that's you when you were in the military. When did you enter?
59.
1959. And you were how old?
1920.
So,
I went in March. I was 19, going to be 20.
so you were a teenager when you went in the military, right?
Yeah.
What branch were you in? The Army?
The Army.
The Army.
The Army. I went in as I pushed up my draft. In March of 59. I dropped out of school, so when I came back, this is when I came back. Because I could tell my rank.
What rank is that? Is it like a corporal?
Actually, it's called a Special Specialist 4th class.
How long did you stay in the military?
2 years.
2 years.
I did my 2-year duty. I was sent to Germany, where I was in the 7th Corps headquarters. That's where I earned that.
Did you see war? Did you go to battle?
No, but being in the Corps headquarters, where we had a 3-star general and a 1-star general. I worked directly for a colonel and major. So there was a lot of brass around. A lot of brass. And we're constantly on alert. Because things between the Russian, if there was a Cold War, there was a lot of friction going, flying back and forth.
What was it like for you in the military when you got there? Did you had to pass physical fitness tests, in other words, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I had no problem with that.
You were able to run a certain amount of miles in under a certain amount of time and do push-ups.
Yeah. I was able to do the physical, even though I was very thin. I was always very thin.
Didn't you have to carry a rucksack, a heavy,
Oh yeah, you had the things on your back.
and go for about a hike of maybe 10 miles?
I don't know what it was, but
Because I remember things like that when I was in the military. You have any memory of things like that?
no.
Did you have to go through something called, I think, white phase, blue phase, red phase?
No.
No. See, what that was for me when I was in the military, I don't know if I have the colors in the right chronology, but white phase is beginning, blue phase is intermediate, red phase is when you're about to graduate basic training. Again, that may not be the right chronology of the colors, but we had that kind of terminology. And did you have to also shoot an M16?
Oh yeah.
Were you good at it?
No.
No?
I bowled, I think.
You had to pass, when I was in the military, I had to pass shooting the M16 at least basically to hit a target. You had to do that too, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And you didn't do well in it?
The shooting, no.
That's interesting that they kept you if you didn't pass, because I had to
I
pass.
must have passed. I must have passed, but it wasn't my strong point.
Mhm.
You know, there were some people who was a strong point. In fact, I seem to remember my gun had a problem with my weapon, and one of the guys in the unit was very good at putting together small parts, and he had me slam it down so that two pieces
So he helped you to fix your weapon because it broke, or it was.
it wasn't functioning properly. But yeah, it was all the problems of basic training I had to go through, and you know, they don't make it easy for you.
Yeah.
But I passed it. You know, I had no problem with that.
You know what that might be too? I mean, from what I saw when I was in the military, they're more likely to keep the males, even though if they don't do that well, and you know, because the females are not eventually going to use them in combat, or that's the idea. You know, there were those kinds of politics where now.
That was something that.
That's a drawing of you, right?
Yeah, by this guy in high school.
So a friend of yours did it?
Yeah, black guy.
Was he good at art?
He must have been.
Let's see. It says by R. Cooper.
John, then there was the friend you had who was a famous artist that you worked with. I mean,
R. Cooper, this drawing says it was done 10/25, 54, does it say?
Yeah, so I would have been.
Okay, so that would have been in 1954. You may have to, I mean, if you want, you may have to bring this to some kind of art restorer. He might be able to frame it so that it's not in pieces like that. So your friend drew that.
Well, somebody I know of, really. He was, you know, drawing everybody.
So was he in art school? Was he in art class rather in school?
Tone, tell me about the famous artist that you worked with as a social worker.
Yeah, you worked. That's what Sarah says. You worked with a famous artist when you were a social worker.
I mentioned the gypsy caseload. Gypsy caseload.
Gypsy caseload.
Yeah, the caseload of gypsies.
Mm-hmm.
And gypsies that come to New York and they need welfare. They come to this welfare center I worked at, and the reason why they kept it is caseload. The funding for these type of people was according to a certain formula, according to certain laws. And they had one caseworker, a guy by the name of Omar Bearden, who was a rather, at that time anyway, well-known black artist. And he was their caseworker. And he knew all the families. And they'd come to New York and then they migratory people coming in and out. And he wrote a book or had a manuscript, whether or not it was ever published, I don't know. But he did write a manuscript about his experiences on this project. I never got to know him personally, in detail.
He was a co-worker, right?
He was a co-worker, but
What was his name, Tony?
Romar Bearden.
Yeah,
Romar,
very famous artist.
Bearden.
Roma Beard.
Bearden.
How do you spell it for me?
B-E-A-R-D.
Beard. But yeah,
Bearden. O-N at the end. Beard. O-N.
Beard done. Maybe I didn't hear of that one. All right. I had to change the camera again. I'm gonna try and pick up where we left off. Now, Tony, do you remember some of the places around here? Some buildings, some places were torn down. Other places they were torn down and replaced. So it might be hard to remember the way it used to be. But you don't remember Port Authority Bus Terminal too well.
Let's put it this way. My first job was on when I was about 10, 11. Outside on 9th Avenue, right outside here, from 43rd down to about 38th Street, was a series of shops. And this included where Port Authority is now. Before that, there were tenement buildings there. And part of the tenements were the shops that the women used to go to and do their shopping for food, etc. And my first shop was, I would buy, it was this little place on, I think it was about 38th Street. I would buy shopping bags, maybe 10 for $1. Or I forget what the price was, and then sell them. Go up and down this shopping mall or the street on 9th Avenue, where all these shops were, and sell shopping bags to these ladies who would buy meats or other groceries, and they'd have them in bulk, and they'd buy these shopping bags to put it in, make it easy for them to carry.
How much did you sell the shopping bags for?
Oh, I forgot.
But you bought them about 10 for $1, right?
Maybe even more. I don't think.
20 for $1 or something.
Or whatever, and then sold them for $1 a piece.
And you made a profit, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, in other words, where Port Authority is now, and it's been there for maybe, Port Authority might have been built in the 1940s.
Or 50s.
In the 1940s or 50s. I guess I could find it in the internet, but right now I don't have that in front of me, that information. But when you were young, when you were like 11 or 12, you didn't know it to be there. It was just a block filled with stores and shops. That is interesting. I thought Port Authority would have been maybe 100 years old, but maybe I'm thinking of Grand Central. As of current, the people who run Port Authority, they're thinking of possibly closing it down or rebuilding it. I don't know. But anyway, now do you remember some places that used to be here and that are still around here in Hell's Kitchen? That pizza parlor on 9th Avenue that used to be between 46th and 47th. Do you remember that? But that might have been in the 60s and 70s. There was this.
No, I wouldn't.
Do you remember that where there is now this, I I think it's called a shaving parlor, a parlor. And there used to be a bar and grill there on that corner. It is 47th, the cross streets of 47th Street and 9th Avenue. It's on the southeast corner. There used to be a large bar and grill there.
On 47th Street.
47th, yes. Do you remember that?
The east.
Southeast, the southeast corner.
Or the northwest corner.
The north.
On 47th Street. Was she?
47th and 9th. Do you remember there used to be an A&P, a small A&P on the corner of, it's the south corner of 47th and 9th. Do you remember that? There used to be a small A&P there.
Vaguely.
Oh boy, vaguely, but yeah, there used to be an A&P there. I think sometime in the mid to late 70s, maybe the early 70s, it became just a fruit and vegetable store. Do you remember, well, Fountain House was built, I think, in 1967. You know where Fountain House is, right? Do you remember what used to be there before Fountain House? No. Were you familiar with, let's say, did you know anybody or did any of your friends come from 525 West 47th Street, which is at 47th Street between 10th and 11th? Did you know anybody from there?
No.
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 Interesting, because...
That's what I was going to get at.
Okay.
That side of 10th Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my cousin was on floor 713, which was directly across the street from 694. But on that side of 10th Avenue, I didn't venture.
Okay, yes, because that was largely a Hispanic neighborhood. I think a part of course, my parents were from Puerto Rico, and I guess that's how they gravitated to that area. I wish I knew. They never told me, but I guess they got in that neighborhood. It's not clear to me, but it was a Puerto Rican neighborhood, at least within that block.
Yeah.
It was, and of course it wasn't, how should I put it? There was crime there. I remember when I was a kid, there was a stabbing, and well, it wasn't pretty, I can only say that, but I remember it, and I was under the age of 10 myself when that happened. Let's see. Do you remember what the fare was back when you were a teenager to take the bus anyway? Oh no.
No, I don't.
Did you ever go along 11th Avenue and
No.
No, not
Like I
along.
said, on that side of 10th Avenue down to 11th Avenue, there was...
Well, but how about 11th Avenue past 47th Street?
that part of the area, except for going down to the Wickland Park.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of going back to what we already talked about a little bit, but when you were in the military, where were you stationed?
Stuttgart, Germany.
In where?
Stuttgart.
You'll have to spell that.
Stuttgart. Stuttgart,
Stuttgart,
Germany.
Germany. So you stayed there 2 years or
I was there a year and a half.
a year and a half?
But basic was in Fort Dix.
My father was in Fort Dix when he was stationed. Fort Dix was in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
As far as you know, is it still there?
I don't know.
I was stationed in South Carolina, Fort Jackson.
Where do you do basic training?
Yeah, just for basic training. All right, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time and telling me about your life and what you know about this neighborhood.
Oh, but one of the things that this other violinist,
Oh yeah, about the violin. Yeah.
Gus, the one who had more experience,
Mm-hmm.
and he had the piano in his house. So he went to music and arts high school.
Mm-hmm.
But what had happened was when he was in 17, in my class in 17, we had to learn Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was never in the Spanish class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened. I was always in the cutting out to go to the music class.
Mm-hmm.
I was the president of my class for some reason or other. But Gus, well, he was from Greece,
Mm-hmm.
so he had to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very agile with languages.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to study Spanish, and he fell in love with Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So after he graduated from music and arts high school, he went on to college, and he majored in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. And he himself is Greek, right?
And he himself was Greek. And he started teaching Spanish adult classes.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of his adult classes, he met his wife, Helga,
Mm-hmm.
who was a German.
Oh.
And they got married. And he wound up teaching Spanish in high schools
Mm-hmm.
in New York. Unfortunately, I lost contact with him. The last time I saw him, I think, was at my wedding. But it was just curious, that here he was, a Greek immigrant, and he wound up teaching Spanish, and he had learned it, started studying it at 17,
Mm-hmm.
at the Pier 17 there.
Is that a picture of you?
I don't know how old I was. It looks like it was about my communion.
Oh, so that's a communion picture, huh?
That could be, I don't know.
And you don't remember when that was done?
No.
We'll call it a day for that. Thank you very much. Thank you too, Sarah.
Oh, absolutely. So yes, if you think of some more things, do you feel like you got some good information?
Yes, at least some. That'll do.